Joe Biden might need an extra scoop of ice cream to soothe his bruised ego after 100,000 uncommitted voters spoiled his big victory in the Michigan Democratic primary. The far-left group of Democrats, totaling 13% of the primary vote, as a way to bully Joe into backing a ceasefire in Israel. It's sure to send a shock down the spine of Democrats who thought November was going to be a cakewalk. Keep this in mind, Democrats lost Michigan in 2016 by only 11,000 votes. And right on cue, the media is melting down over it.
If we get to Chicago at the convention, and this thing is still going on, I don't want to think about what's going to happen there.
That's a wow. This is a place President Biden carried big time in 2020. This is key to his chances of defeating Donald Trump in Michigan.
Michigan's going to be tougher because you got a bunch of constituencies that we need that right now are grumpy, to say the least.
I understand that you're frustrated, but you got to realize if you let this other one in, we're all screwed.
The other big concern Democratic voters have about the president is over his advanced age. Joe Biden just had his annual physical, and it says the president is a, quote, healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency. The White House goes on to claim that Biden's doctors don't think he needs a cognitive test. But how about a push-up contest?
I'll bet you anything that Joe Biden could beat the daylights out of Trump in a push-up contest, for example. And Trump knows it, too, although if it was a cheeseburger eating contest, it might turn out differently.
Okay. All right. I'll start with you, Martha. You know, this uncommitted group, they were looking for 10,000 votes. They end up getting over 100,000 votes of uncommitted voters against Biden. They feel emboldened by this. They think they're going to go to to Chicago, and they're going to be able to make a difference in the platform. What do you think?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting that we've seen over the last several weeks a number of high-profile Democrats questioning whether or not Joe Biden should be the candidate. This gives them another arrow in their quiver if they want to continue to poke at this and say, oh, he's going to have big problems. James Carville said, I think it's a lot deeper than just progressive advocates or young people. I hope the president can get some kind of ceasefire and take this off the front burner. So they see this as a very difficult issue for him. On the other hand, you know, he can't run the risk of upsetting Jewish voters in the Democrat base either, because they're already, you know, aligning with conservatives and President Trump in bigger ways. So they are in a very tight spot here. I just wonder if they're going to use this difficulty that they saw in Michigan last night against Joe Biden and try to encourage him to push out. They don't have an alternative, of course. One other thing I would just mention about Michigan, there was a 30% more Republican votes cast than Democrat vote in Michigan. Mm-hmm. It's a big number, 320,000 votes. So what does that show? Does it show that Republicans turned out more for the primary, or does it show something significant for November? But that's a big number in terms of turnout for Republicans last night.
You know, Jesse, we know that Biden is not doing well with the youth vote, although to Biden, everybody's younger. But, you know, there's talk about whether or not he's competing, the young voters going out to vote.
You're the youth vote.
Don't go there, Jesse. Now I lost my train of thought. The issue is whether or not these young people stay home on the couch.
Right.
You know, if they're not fired up about him to begin with.
So not only did he lose a lot of Arabs to the uncommitted, he lost Ann Arbor and East Lansing, which is University of Michigan and Michigan State. Go blue. So you're seeing the college students also not show up to be uncommitted. And the question is, if Trump's on the ballot in November and you got Joe Biden, are they going to come around to go home with Joe? They're not voting for Trump. So they're going to either do third party, or they're not going to vote at all, or just go down ballot. And if I were Biden, I'd be scared, because Wayne County, where Detroit is, 25% of that vote was uncommitted. That's a lot. And so he has to bank on peace in the Middle East, Judge, to bring back the uncommitted. He has to make a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians in order to consolidate his base. That is a tall order. And we don't know if RFK Jr. is even going to make the ballot. If he does, that's even bigger problem for Joe Biden. They gave the president a clean bill of health. That must mean then he could stand trial for the documents case.
Yeah,
and
good
debate
point.
Trump.
And debate Trump.
All right, I'm going to go to you next, Harold. You know, they say that, I think it was Karine Jean-Pierre who said that, you know, President Biden is, he doesn't need a cognitive test. And they gave us his current health issues that he's being treated for, apnea and reflux and a bunch of other stuff. Are you comfortable with this president?
Look, I really feel youthful when I talk about President Biden. I think a couple things. First, there's a history of protest votes in Michigan. Obama in 2012 for re-election, he lost 20,000 people voted uncommitted. Now it's 101,000 this go round. So I'm not naive, nor am I trying to downplay the fact that this is a serious issue, and I hope that the campaign takes this seriously. I thought my old friend James Carville had it largely right. If we find ourselves going to Chicago as Democrats, and these issues continue to percolate and continue to be high on people's and voters' minds, it's going to be a challenge. Two things. I think that Martha raised, because Sandra was there yesterday, I think Martha raised.
We all look alike. Come on, Harold.
Well, you do, but Sandra was sitting there yesterday. It's a joke. Martha raised a point that if I were in the White House, I'd be slightly more concerned about. I think the enthusiasm was even higher than what you attribute. I think it was almost 35 to 40% more Republicans showed up. Now, some will argue because you had Nikki Haley and in the race, and you have this two parties going at one another, and that certainly is a plausible explanation. But if you're serious about politics, you got to look at that seriously and be mindful of that. Finally, two-thirds of the country, more than two-thirds of the country, does not want a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Is age a part of it? Maybe. I haven't seen all the polling data, but I think there may be some fatigue around other issues as well. So if I'm President Biden, you have to figure out ways in which we bring about peace and security, even if we have to use force and even massive force or the threat of it at times to secure it. And I hope that the White House does not back down in our support for releasing the hostages. And I hope we don't back down in our support for ensuring that we try to weaken Hamas in every which way that we can. And we ought to say that in a way to unite our party and unite people who believe that peace and security in the Middle East is the future, but it can't be if we allow Hamas to be a central and important part of it.
Well, I guess they're recommending a two-state solution. I don't know that worked. Greg, wrap it up.
Well, if this uncommitted voting thing is about Israel and Hamas, I don't think that's good news for Americans in general. When you have a large segment of society that looks at a response from one country to a horrific attack of rape and dismemberment as somehow worse than the attack itself, that kind of frightens me. It's not a Democrat-Republican thing. I would prefer a different outcome that would be favorable to Biden, even if it helps Trump. Because, I get the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but Biden is not my enemy. Hamas is, right? So I don't think these folks that are doing this protest vote are suddenly going to embrace Make America Great Again over Joe Biden. Michelle Tlaib, is that her name? What's her first name?
I don't know if it's Michelle.
Rashida.
Rashida Tlaib, right, voted against condemning Hamas as a terrorist group, right? That's the hero in this. That's not good. I think the problem with the Dems is they cultivated identity separatism, and now the chickens have come home to roost. They have one large identity faction who see themselves as a certain nationality before they see themselves as Americans. I don't like that outcome.
I don't either. Good analysis, Greg.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Coming up, an explosive moment over the murder of Laken Riley by an illegal immigrant. The mayor of the sanctuary city getting raked over the coals. Watch this.
Liar! Liar!
We're here to listen.
Liar! Liar!
More on that next.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.